And what happens in someone's body when I tell you really, vulnerably, Peter, I really feel like I suck or I had a really tough day at work. And your response is, no, you're amazing. What are you talking about? What happens to me?
It seems so counterintuitive for us as a human being who, we're all striving to be the best version of ourselves, living our best lives, accessing potential, it's like a litany of marketing campaign slogans out there for you to be the best you. So rather than trying to perfect circumstances, which was what a lot of people do, my work and my interest is in helping people find freedom no matter the circumstances. And that is where there is no upper limit to true, not just health. And so what you're talking about is exquisite and around the biohacking.
This, I guess, misunderstanding how often you should go to the bathroom. You're holding on to shit.
Hi, my name is Aggie and this is Biohacking Bestie. The one-stop shop for a modern queen, where you can find biohacking courses, self-growth courses, and where you can find the most incredible community of women so you can hit all of your biohacking goals and beyond.
Welcome to Biohacking Bestie. And today my guest is the mind architect, a good friend of mine, and someone who I have witnessed crumble people's idea of what limitations are in our head. Peter Crone, welcome.
The crumbler.
The crumbler, yeah. As usual, I have a massive favor for you. If you're listening to this and anything resonates on any level, if you have any questions to Peter, make sure to tag us on Instagram at Peter Crone or at Aggie. We're very curious. This conversation isn't just one-sided. We want to continue the dialogue through the podcast after the show. So just let us know what you're going through and bug Peter because he's amazing and you might as well. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
A lot has happened since we dropped in back in 2020. I was living by myself, full of fear. And you were actually one of the very first people that I had access to that kind of showed me what true mindset change even means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we needed a lot of it back then.
In other words, you blew my mind. But blew my mind on many levels, actually blew my mind. And I was like, oh, my mind was so this small, rigid thing that was making me small and miserable. And you came and you just light it up on fire and just did this. And then it expanded. And here I am, still work in progress.
We're all a work in progress, myself included. But yeah, it's nice to have some of those tenant improvements, as I call it, from the mind, where you knock down some of the walls and realize, oh, there's a little bit more space to play with. So yeah, very much. Especially back then, there was obviously so much fear mongering going on in the world, and everyone was at their wits' end with regards to whether they're going to die or not. And yeah.
Actually, funny. I don't think I ever mentioned that on a podcast, but I forgot how we met. We met because I was going to India on a trip and I stopped by Dave Asprey coffee shop to get myself some supplements. That was 2019 or 2018. And you were standing in a line in front of me. And so I'm a very chatty person. So I was like, what are you getting? So we connected. I was like, oh my God, what a great guy. I didn't realize who you were at the time. So we ended up grabbing coffee after. And I was like, oh my God, like that, how ironic it is that I ended up running into a mind architect.
And a Bulletproof Cafe, where now you're talking about biohacking. Right? And I just did Dave's podcast and I'm speaking at his event. So
and you spoke last year as well at the Biohacking Conference. And so I kind of want to help people understand what even it is that you do, because you're not a therapist, you're not a coach, but you also worked with like Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise.
That was years ago. That was a former career. So
I know, but it still counts, right? Because it's like, I'm curious what you were able to bring from that career into this career.
I think probably, that was where I was really sculpting bodies versus crumbling minds, right? It's still a beautiful form of transformation.
Sounds super evil.
Yes, I know, this whole crumbling thing. I'm not sure whether it's a good rebrand or not. So that was an entirely different career. It was such a eye-opening experience for me, probably more than them. I obviously had done a lot of work to get to the place where I could help them to maintain a whole new level of vitality and physical prowess. And, I was training, I was doing yoga, I was doing Pilates with them. That was great. But what I realized at the time is that to transform the body because of its density takes quite a while. But as you've witnessed, both for yourself and in seeing some of my work, you can transform someone's identity within a matter of seconds when somebody sees something they've never seen before, right? So that's one of my favorite quotes from Proust. He says, the journey of real discovery lies not in finding new lands, but in looking through new eyes. So what I'm really giving people without the surgical procedures and general anesthetic is a set of new eyes.
So beautiful. For me as a former travel expert, this hits on a deeper level as well.
Yeah, and that's why I think travel is one of the greatest forms of education, right? And I think for us, at least being from Europe, the proximity of different countries, cultures, foods, languages affords us the opportunity to see how vastly different worlds can be. I think in the States, people don't perhaps need to travel so much because there's so much to explore just within the United States themselves. So I know for myself, I'm very grateful for the fact that I grew up in England. I could go to France. My dad worked on the boats within an hour, obviously a flight, very similar, or even go up to Scotland where you can't even understand what anyone's saying, it's still quote unquote within the same lump of land. So that's to come back to your original question. That's really what I'm doing, is helping people look through new eyes, which as a lay way of saying, give you a different perspective both on yourself and life. And we are all really the byproduct of the view we have of ourself and life, right? Everyone's thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and consequently results, that's the sort of the cascade of how things manifest, is based on the view you have. So if who you think yourself to be is, as a very common example, that you're not enough, then either you go into it and it's sort of self-sabotage, you don't get the results you want in life, relationships don't work, you don't get the value in the marketplace in your work, or you try and compensate for it and you become a perfectionist or a people pleaser, but you're still being driven by the same fundamental code. So I get to these deep subconscious recesses and understand what are some of the limiting beliefs. They're not even beliefs, it's deeper than a belief, but the language that people live within that then they become misidentified with. Yeah, so it's pretty profound and, not for the light of heart, although I think it applies to everybody. Even in my mastermind, we've had over 30 countries now, I think, represented people who are getting up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning from Japan and Australia to be part of it. And everyday folk who are dealing with relationship, health, finances, the loss of a loved one, or any aspect of life, to be able to reframe it, look through different eyes, ultimately mitigates and removes human suffering.
So Peter, I think I did one of your original masterminds in early 2020, if not 2019, where it was this, I don't remember all the stories, but one of my favorite ones, and the first reframe that was really eye-opening for me personally, was this guy who was, I don't remember his name, but he was gay, he was Colombian, and he just kind of felt like his parents hate the fact that he's gay and he's not being accepted.
So good memory. So that's my Free Your Mind program, right? So I worked with 4 people. So that was
ages ago.
That was a long time ago. That's actually now, so I created a new platform called Freedom because I consider freedom to be my main product, right? Sort of more internal freedom, spiritual freedom, mental freedom, but then that leads to financial freedom and all the other things. So my Free Your Mind program was my initial sort of flagship program that's now sitting in there. So people now can pay a monthly subscription and they get all my workshops on anxiety, depression, health, relationships. So that's a different thing. The mastermind is a live interaction with me over 3 months. So we meet every 2 weeks. And the format is so beautiful because in the morning I'll teach theory. There's some interaction. I get people to hear what they share what they heard from what I heard, and maybe I have some questions. But then in the afternoon I do coaching. So similar to what you watched, but it's even more intensive because it's with hundreds of people from around the world who are vicariously getting their own liberation through somebody having the courage to put their hand up and talk about why their relationship's not working or whatever it is. So
there's this beautiful principle in coaching that whenever you're working in a group setting and someone expresses what they're struggling with, there's always something that you can apply to your own life, right? So it's very easy to dismiss. I'm like, it's not my turn, so it sucks. But like miraculously, often it happens that whoever is raising their hand is asking a question on your behalf. And that was really beautiful because how did you help that guy reframe him not being accepted by his parents, which I think a lot of us listening to this right now are like either not accepting by our partners or our families,
parents, co-workers, siblings, all of it. It's a huge thing. I mean, one of the primal desires and needs of a human being is a sense of belonging, right? Like it's deep in our DNA, because fundamentally back in the day when we were all more in tribes, like if you're not part of a collective, of a group, you don't survive, right? You're going to be mauled and eaten by bigger predators out there in the wild. So it's still deep in our conditioning to have that sense of belonging. So the craving for acceptance, which we see exacerbated on social media with all the filters and the changes, and especially for women, there's so much pressure. With him, so the reframe is to realize that the craving we have for acceptance is not from someone else, but rather from ourselves, right? As cliche as that is. So if you really get it though and really feel it, if who you are for yourself is founded in self-acceptance and love, which is another container for it, then it's not that you don't care what other people think. It just doesn't worry. It doesn't phase you anymore, right? You're not concerned about that. There's no anxiety. It's such a restless state to be in, right? If you think about in any social environment, which we're sort of, as mammals, as humans, we're constantly in some sort of community, whether it be work, family, friends, just walking around in society. You're on a train, you're on a plane. And so if you're in this perpetual state of being self-conscious in terms of how you're being received or seen or perceived by those in your environment, that's the anxieties, the fear, the panic disorders, the social anxieties that people have. And if there's nothing else that people get from this podcast, is to at least reframe it and realize you are not worried about, like, not a double not, but like emphasize you're not worried about what other people think about you. You're worried what you think about you. And
so powerful if you guys let that sink in. And I think with you, we need to take a couple of pauses as you say things, because like I think there's like different layers, like a good chocolate cake or a wedding cake, to how
or a good crumble.
That's true. But like there's different layers of what we can understand from what you're just saying, right? So I can okay, I'm not worried about what you think, whether you guys think I'm a great host. There's a part of me that thinks, am I a good host? Am I asking the good questions? Am I present enough? Like, am I bringing enough value with this podcast? And then there's a part of me like, what do I think about myself? And then there's another layer. No, but what do you really think about yourself? Right? And it just goes deeper. And it's like scuba diving into your own soul and realizing, oh, okay. This is just so interesting. The driving force behind everything we do.
Ultimately, when that's where, for me, the differentiating factor I would assert with my work is you go and see a great therapist, you see a psychiatrist, you see a spiritual teacher, you see a priest, you see a good friend. Like there's many ways that we can get some sort of support with somebody who knows how to listen from a place of compassion and non-judgment. But most of the advice tends to be strategic in nature, right? So if somebody's feeling down, they've gone through a breakup, they don't think they're going to get the job interview, whatever it is that they're dealing with on a very normal, everyday human experience, the tendency from a place of love and kindness, so none of it's wrong, there's no fault, is to either, if someone's like, I don't know, I'm such an idiot and I'm a loser. And no, you're amazing. And, we want to encourage, we want to bring positivity.
And what happens in someone's body when I tell you really, vulnerably, Peter, I really feel like I suck, or I had a really tough day at work. And your response is, no, you're amazing. What are you talking about? What happens to me?
Well, for most people, you would only be able to speak to your own personal experience. But what usually happens is the human being on the receiving end of what might even be a great compliment and a certain degree of truth to it is they don't feel heard. Right? Because your reality, albeit not necessarily, flattering or something as a state that you want to stay in, is nonetheless how you feel right now. And I think as human beings, especially when I help people in relationships, one of the greatest gifts you can give anybody is in the moment to honor their reality. You don't necessarily want them to hang out there. I can remember I was doing a retreat in Maui for a group, and this mother was talking about the difficulty which she was having with one of her sons. She had 2 boys, and the youngest one, not that he was in any way misbehaved or difficult, but he struggled with confidence. His older brother tended to be, like is often the case, the better academic, the better athlete. And so she said, how do I help my son? Because he's always saying I'm not as good as Jimmy or whatever. And I said, well, how do you currently deal with it? And she says, no, I tell him that he's got these amazing qualities and how good he is and how much da-da-da. And I said, yeah, you're not listening. And so it kind of was a bit jarring for her.
Yeah, because she feels like she's being a great mom, and here you are telling her that she's not listening.
So that was a bit confrontational, but I did it in a way to help. Because when we're stuck in our stories and our narratives, we tend to tell our script over and over to everybody. And before you know it, it starts to become your own truth versus, no, it's just a story that I'm currently sort of obsessed with.
Yeah.
And I said, you're not listening. He's trying to tell you something and you're not hearing him. And we went through a couple of them, and she actually then admitted, she said, wow, she says, one of the things he always says is that you don't listen to me, Mum. And which was hard. It's giving me chills now because where it went was so beautiful. I said, you don't want him there. I get it. You're not doing anything wrong as a mother. You want him to feel pride. You want him to feel confidence. You want him to feel seen. You don't want him to feel inadequate next to his brother. But you can't move him to those places until you meet him where he is.
Which is so hard to even understand what that even means, that starting from acceptance, the best way to change somebody is to accept them.
Yes, where they're at. And again, with the very subtle but important caveat underneath that doesn't mean you want them to stay there. So the part that just gave me the chills is at the end of our conversation, I said, this is my invitation. When you go home, meet your son. And of course, the floods of tears come out because she realizes, oh my God, I haven't been with him, to be with. There's something, and I've gone through this recently, it seems so counterintuitive for us as a human being who, we're all striving to be the best version of ourselves, living our best lives, accessing potential, it's like a litany of marketing campaign slogans out there for you to be the best you. But there's something that is so precious when you get to be with a human being who is maybe at their worst, and to just be there with them and hold space and know that they are loved and safe, and it's okay to feel broken, shattered in perhaps for them the worst way that they've ever experienced. There's such a proclivity and a tendency and almost an obsession with this way that we are supposed to portray ourselves. We live in a world where it's all about appearances, social media, the filters are endless, the preparation is endless, and that's okay. I get it. But it's a little bit sort of almost adorable because it's kind of like a kid, right, who just wants to do a good job and is looking for that accolade from mom or dad.
Yeah, very much the inner child of if I get everything perfect, then I'll win all of you guys' love. And
affection and attention.
But then
and
it feels so empty because I'm going to be loved for the things that aren't really me.
And to go back to what you said, the driving force, which is the real powerful part, right, where I'm going to these subconscious programs is to look at the mechanism that drives that need, that drives the behavior for perfectionism, people pleasing, the appearance obsession that people have. It's adorable. That's why I don't want people to feel judged, because everyone right now will be like, oh my God, look at my last post on Instagram. It took me an hour to get ready. Who knows? Whatever it is that people are doing, it's all okay. It's all okay. You're human. I'm just inviting people to maybe make a little bit more room for the human part. And I know for myself, being blessed to often support people hold space in some of the most challenging, traumatic times of their life, it really is so beautiful. And I feel so flattered and honored to be able to hold somebody when they feel they're at their least lovable time and still love them.
And that you can only do that because you were there for yourself. You can't hold space for somebody in the most unlovable place if you didn't hold yourself and you're most unlovable.
Yeah, that definitely helps. It's a unique part about being human where we are sort of wired, right, to be of service to a certain degree. There's not many human beings apart from the few out there who are, trying to control the world, rule the world, kill everybody, and sort of worship Satan. But aside from that, most people are good. 99.9% of people, they want to make a difference. They want to help somebody who's struggling with putting their bag in an overhead compartment on the plane or bringing their shopping bags up to their apartment. Most human beings really care enough to be able to see if someone's struggling and make a difference. It's however ironic that when it comes to self-care, people really struggle.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, because it's hard, right? Like it gets to a point where, like, when I share something with a friend, like going through a difficulty with Jacob, oh, at least you should be grateful that you have a partner. You know, it's very easily dismissed. So I find that, like, people who can't sit with their own sadness, with their own pain, they can't hold space for me, because they get so uncomfortable with me crying in front of them, or me feeling like, oh, it's been actually really tough.
Yeah.
Because the immediate was like, oh, you can be grateful, but like, it's not for them to say. For them, all you can do is to hold space.
Yes. And there's a gradient, right? There's a gradient of the capacity to have love, compassion through the lens of listening and being with somebody. I mean, Schadenfreude is a term in German, right? Which is where people get pleasure out of seeing other people's failures and disappointments, which really speaks to these deeper programs of where they feel so unseen, so unvalued, so worthless, that it's the only means by which they can get some sense of self-worth.
Temporary.
Yeah, temporary. I mean, like most things, it's like an addiction, right? Like whatever it is, choose your poison, right? Like if it's a booze, it's weed, it's cocaine, it's watching somebody else fail, which I think there's a bit of an obsession that with social media, right? Like where people like to see somebody who either gets hurt, God forbid, some of those videos, but where for a minute, it's sort of just through sheer perspective, it makes somebody feel slightly better about their life.
Yes. And it's very much an obsession when someone like falls short or there's a mistake. We live in a cancel culture. We immediately want to say like, oh, I don't like you anymore. You made one mistake, whatever that mistake might be. And it turns into, I can't trust you. You're the worst person ever. There's like, you don't really get second chances, because people don't give themselves second chances on anything. Right. So they it's very quickly, easily dismissed.
Which again speaks to the absence of making space for our humanity, which I think would be the next iteration of humanity, whatever we're heading towards. And obviously there's massive shifts going on in the world. I think an old one that was so founded in limitations and corruption and lies and pretense is falling apart, right? And I think a new one where people are waking up to, wait a minute, like, we're being lied to consistently. There's toxicity in our airs, in our waters, in our foods, like intentionally. This is not what we're committed to collectively. So I'm hoping that this new version of what it is to be human allows for the fact that we're human, which seems like a completely nonsensical thing to have to say.
But so beautiful. I love what you said also about I want to unravel what it means to be human in a second, but I want to go back to what you said, the energy behind everything we do changes the outcome, which is very much Gary Zukav and the seed of the soul.
Yes.
And I just want to, for those of you who are watching this or listening, you're walking and you kind of feel like, oh my God, maybe I did use a filter on my photo, or maybe I was short to my friend, or maybe I dismissed her feelings because I just didn't want to listen to her complain again, or whatever it might be that you fell short. I want to say, like, there's very few things that are inherently wrong. It's the energy behind those things that that basically change what they really are, right? And so can you give us some examples of?
Well, the ones you listed are perfect, right? Because I know for myself, I use social media. I'm on Instagram. I've taken a sunset, flick through whatever the options are, Los Angeles, but I don't even Paris, like of course, like we're telling a story, right? But I think those things are less of a concern compared to your intimate relationships that matter, meaning intimate family, friends, loved ones, spouses, children. Where there's another form of filter, which is more about self-protection, right? Or it can be also a means by which we're so scared to reveal the deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and insecurity that we have, that we don't let people get close. We don't let people see who we are, right? Those are the filters that I'm appealing to. The fact that somebody who's, perfect example is walking around right now and go, oh my God, does Peter Crone think I'm a bad person because I used the
Paris filter,
Jakarta filter? No,
he does.
Yeah, yes, you're a terrible person. No, not at all. I think I'm appealing to the real relationship with ourselves.
And so because actually the real reason why I would like to even for us to dive in, just since last time we talked, I got very much into biohacking.
Yes.
And I actually talk about it in the book that you can biohack all you want, but if you do it from a place of lack, in the place of what's wrong with me, I hate my fat, I don't really like myself, then that's just not a very healthy place to do it. First, I'm like, I'm curious how I can support my body.
Yes. And very, very different. And it's like, I think why Dave has asked me to come and speak, and I've been invited to speak at many of these more longevity/health type conferences. So one of my quotes, which might seem quite, bold, is that unless you free your mind, you can't access true health.
I 100% agree. It's so powerful. It doesn't matter if you're biohacking. I'm all about biohacking, but none of this is going to work if you are a prisoner of your own mind.
Exactly.
And it's like all of these mysterious diseases and hormone issues for women and gut issues and autoimmune and
sleep. And,
what do you think about autoimmune actually, and how its psychology can be linked to not fully accepting yourself?
100% correlated. Autoimmune really is sort of the umbrella under which allopathic medicine just throws shit that they don't know how to handle, right?
Yes.
It's sort of just the catch-all, it's like whatever you have in your email, it's like spam, spam for diseases. So yes, that's why, again, I've been blessed to work with you, you said some of these VIPs that I helped who had all the resources in the world, private chefs, best organic food, farm to table, whatever it is, the best trainers on the planet, because clearly that's who I was at the time. And they're still struggling with whatever it is that people are struggling with, right? Relationship issues, self-worth issues, pretense. And so that's why it's a categoric, as I said, statement and a bit blunt for some people. But unless you free your mind first, you're not going to access genuine vitality. One of my other expressions is you can become the best version of your limited self.
Oh, right. That's so good. Oh my God. Yes.
So, as a human being, we go through these different stages of evolution, and that's the beauty of being human. It's sort of the mountain without a top, which can also be at times frustrating and exhausting. It's like, oh my God, I've got to face more shit. I'm Peter Crone. I've done 20 years of work. And now there's something else to look at.
I heard a friend say the other day, it was just like, I'm done with growth. I'm like, oh, are you? I said, I did all of it. I'm like, oh, cool. Good luck. Yeah. And sure enough, a month later, the universe was like, ta-da, are you really?
Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's like some of the memes, there's this kid, he's got this face like, no, and it says something like, wait, there's more after I die or something like that. So yeah, it's a little bit incessant at times. It can become overwhelming. But when you get into the realization that it is a game, and with any game, you aspire to get to the next levels, right? Anybody who's a gamer in the world of videos, they know that they don't want to hang out.
Only 3 billion people, so I think
it's massive, right?
Yeah,
it's insane.
The biggest industry, after probably porn, actually.
Which is another form of game at some level, not a very healthy one, nor is videos. But the point is, there's this idea that you're hopefully aspiring to get to better levels of expertise, skill, speciality. So that's why with that expression, which really does hit home for a lot of people, I shared that with Dave, and he was like, oof, becoming the best version of your limited self. It's like, I like to use analogies that help people. You live in a 600 square foot studio apartment, say, and when you moved in, perhaps you even bought it, it was run down, it was in a shitty area of town, there's a little bit of mold, the drywall is broken, the carpet is stained, there's an old stove. But you get it at a great price. And what you do is you tear down the wall, you take out the mold, you put in beautiful hardwood floors, you got fresh paint that is all toxic free. You got a brand new freaking Sub-Zeros and all the things, right? And it's like, wow, that's a huge transformation. That is the best version of that limited space. Mm-hmm. What I'm doing is knocking down walls and realizing, that 600 square foot is one corner of a 20,000 square foot mansion that sits on 10 acres. Right. Yeah. So the difference there is now you get into an explorative mindset. So one of my distinctions, again, I teach is the difference between searching or exploring. Most people are searching. The energy of searching is coming from some sense of lack. I'm looking for something, acknowledgement, wealth, security, value, love. But it's always reinforcing these deep-seated narratives that I don't have that. Mm-hmm. It's I'm a not something. I talk about the negation of self. So I'm not enough. I'm not loved. I'm not valued. So knocking down the knots, getting that's why what I referred to earlier as the not is part of my work. It's a double negative. So I'm not good enough. It dissolves it. It removes the wall. It reveals a bigger space where now I get to feel more freedom, a greater sense of love for life, and a sense of possibility for what's now available to me.
I think what I find it really difficult is to communicate to people what's on the other side of a free mind, of that process. Because someone can be watching this right now. You might be watching like, oh, cool. He works with all the celebrities and he helps people and they wake up at 2 a.m. It's all good. But I'm kind of comfortable in my own pain, my own shit.
Yeah.
And people just that motivation, because we don't know what's on the other side. We don't know what freedom really tastes like.
Yeah.
And I think an average woman is surrounded by toxins and is exposed to 168 chemicals a day.
Right.
And so none of us really knows what to be chemical free. There's not a single person. Like they said that the Teflon is in 99.5% of, humanity.
I'm sure.
So we only know what we know. And as you biohack, you're like another like veil of clarity comes up and you're like, oh, wow. And so what I usually say, there is no upper limit to health.
Right.
As I'm realizing, it just gets better and better and better. We're just scratching the surface because we're all so sick in this very sick environment.
Yeah.
And so what do you tell people who are listening to this right now and be like, okay, well, but I'm getting my results. I'm going to the gym. I look hot. I don't really care that I'm doing it from a place of not good enough because the end result, it's still the same. So
the payoff
why?
is worth it. Yeah. That's okay. That's where they're at. One of my most popular quotes is life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. So keep going. Just like you said, the person who's like, I'm done growing a month later. No, life is like, no, we've got a different program for you. So we're in this container. We're in this paradigm. There's no getting out, right? Until you're done. And then there's the argument that you come back. But so the point is, it doesn't matter. You can get those glimpses of life where we can all look at like, you were at your best, you were in a great relationship, you loved your job, your house was tidy, the kids were well behaved, your hair looked great, your skin was glowing. But it was so short-lived till like what, the next morning, maybe later in that day, and then something breaks, someone's upset. There's always drama, there's always chaos, there's always something to handle. That's the nature, we could argue, of this dimension. And so the idea of changing the world, perfecting everything, to me is a little bit of a misnomer, and it's exhausting, right? It's like I use an analogy when I'm helping friends or clients to understand, or in the mastermind, the futility of the constraint they're in, right? If you're not enough, and I said to a client once in New York, there's not enough clothes in the world to compensate for your feeling of inadequacy. Like you get that, right? Because people do that, right? That's the retail therapy version of trying to compensate for some sense of, especially for a woman.
I just literally posted that today, that self-love used to mean for me, I'm doing a bubble bath. I can buy myself good makeup, or I'm going to get myself a good dress, because that's what society told me self-love is. But self-love is having boundaries, working on my mindset, and many other things.
Yeah. So it's a totally different understanding when you realize that mechanism is itself the cancer is a strong word, but it's a cancer of the mind, right? Where you can't actually overcome something that itself isn't a truth. You can only see it for what it is. So regardless of where you think you're at in your life, and if you want to, sort of just check out from the self-development process, which I can understand is very appealing. Like, believe me, I've done enough. It's still going to show up at some point, because life is going to present you with a circumstance that's challenging. Somebody's going to say something that's upsetting. The world of politics, which is so filled with corruption, where whichever side you stand on is going to piss you off. You're going to hear something. Your kid, a family member, a parent is going to get sick. Like, it's never ending. So rather than trying to perfect circumstances, which was what a lot of people do, my work and my interest is in helping people find freedom no matter the circumstances. And that is where there is no upper limit to true, not just health. And so what you're talking about is exquisite. And around the biohacking, like I spoke to a client of mine today, guy's got more money than time. He's got 4 or 5 homes. He's very educated. He's brilliant when it comes to finances. He's like, yeah, what is this biohacking stuff, right? So it's a new foray for him to even understand, like,
and become an expert in, and become a pro, right?
And explore, like I said earlier, a whole new realm of possibility for himself, right? So now that's just the physical realm. What I'm fascinated by is like the power of the mind and our ability to, people talk about manifestations, or the frequencies that we operate that then attract the things that we want: people, money, health. So when you shift the way that you look at the hierarchy of mind, body, and soul, right? To me, if you imagine ripples on a pond, most people, if I would say, where's your mind? They would do something like this. They point to their head area, right? That's where your brain is. But that's part of your physiology. That's part of your hardware. For me, the mind is more like an aura. It's around us. So the body sits in the mind, which goes back to my statement earlier, why, unless you free your mind, you can't fully access vitality, because it's like living in a home and you're doing all of the great protocols, but your house itself is full of mold.
Beautiful.
Right? So now if you look at that as the mind, as a container, until you free the mind of all the constraints, I'm not loved, I'm not enough, I'm not safe, I'm not worthy, all the knots that I call about, and they are metaphorically knots in our mind, right? K-N-O-T as well.
Yeah.
So those constraints, they even physiologically are going to push you into sympathetic mode of your autonomic nervous system, which is fight or flight or freeze, right? So when you're doing that, you're dumping norepinephrine, cortisol, adrenaline all into your body, which doesn't allow tissues to heal. You don't digest your food properly. So even if you're eating the best organic prepared by a chef, if you're the few that can live that way, but even if you're trying to do well and you're going to a good grocery store or farmer's market, but you are fundamentally in a state of stress, which is a broad statement for whatever it is that you're fighting, then you're not digesting your food properly, because it's not a priority for your body, because it's like, wait, there's something else you're attending to. There's a perceived threat that your husband's going to say something, your wife's going to say something, your mother-in-law is going to call upset. So you're on edge. And so really, ultimately, to get to that real sense of true vitality, the biggest container, I would say, is fundamentally to feel safe and at peace in your own skin.
Yes. So we'll get to that in a second, but I want to actually pause on the word vitality.
Yeah.
We always use the word health as a lack of disease.
Yes, that's a Western definition.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. So people are like, well, I'm healthy, but I have absolutely no energy. I think very small. It's really hard for me to like break in a proper belly laugh and all of these things, and the person feels heavy. And I always think of, when you said vitality, I immediately thought of your background in Ayurveda.
Yes.
That there is that health or vitality is like how connected you are to prana or the chi, the life force energy. And can you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And this is why when I've done some of my workshops around Ayurveda, people are blown away, right? Because in the Western world,
you should definitely do it, because I know how knowledgeable you are. And I was sorry to intercept, but when I did ayahuasca, and she was like, "You're so cute that you think that biohacking and science is this cutting edge of Ayurveda, and like Chinese medicine knew it for thousands of years."
Yes.
Speaking of digestion, for example, that you can't digest when you're in fight or flight, right?
Exactly. And that's why I loved, when I first came across Ayurveda, I'd been a trainer, I'd done biomechanics, I studied human biology and exercise physiology. I have a Bachelor of Science in it. I got one of the highest graded theses. Like, I
didn't know that about you.
Yeah, that was my background. That's why I got into training initially, because for me to understand the body was child's play. It was very easy, right? That's when I then was introduced to Ayurveda. I was like, wow, I don't know anything. I sat there because I'd done back then the balanced diet, the South Beach diet, the fucking blood type diet. Like, there was all sorts of man-made methods of trying to access health, some of which
also
work for some people.
As in, some of them are actually man-made as in male.
Yes, true.
For women.
Absolutely. Doesn't account for the
cycle
complexities of the endocrine system of a woman. But when I heard this, I was actually, when I was training to become a yoga teacher, because I wanted to add all of these different strings to my bow of helping to transform bodies. And the teacher, thank God, brought in an Ayurveda practitioner who spoke to us about Ayurveda, because it's an intrinsic part of the Vedas, of which yoga is part, right? And so I sat there, like my mouth was like ajar. Like I was just like whoa, this just it's the most sensical thing I'd ever heard, because it was based on the principles of physics. It's not like someone's system. It was like air is light, it's mobile, it's cooling, right? It's fire is hot. And earth is like, it's got
grounding.
A density. Like it's very basic delineators of the qualities and characteristics
and it's been
of the
around for thousands of years.
As long as the planet has, because it's the elements, right? So we're looking at the elements, and it's like everything is made up of the elements. So if you predominate in a fire tendency or constitution, you're going to have inflammatory disorders. Yes. And you have a little bit of air too. So then the air is somebody who's got a light frame, maybe dry skin, cracking joints, constipation is going to tend towards Parkinson's, degenerative disorders, right? So to come back full circle to the health component, Ayurveda has the most comprehensive definition of health I'd ever heard.
What is it? I don't.
It's going to be a little gobbledygook for people, but it basically says samadosha. It means to balance your doshas, vata, pitta, kapha. They're the three primary energies. Sama agni, that means to have balanced digestion, not just in terms of your stomach, but at the cellular level where you metabolize. It's one thing to eat hydrochloric acid and all of the different enzymes that are there to digest, but then when it goes through the bloodstream and it gets absorbed, it goes through the liver and it comes to the cell, where the apple that you ate is now going to become a skin cell. There's a process of digestion there. Samadhatu, that's the tissues. So we talk about, blood, bone, and there's correlations, but there's 7 tissue systems in Ayurveda. So you've got the balance of the energies, the balance of your digestion, the balance of your tissues. Malakriya means to have your waste systems all functioning, which is sweat, urine, and feces. A lot of people right there are, I'm out. They're like, I'm not doing well there. So
I want to talk to you about it in a second.
Yeah, so malakriya, and then it talks about the pleasantness is the actual translation, or the happiness. Oh, and clean senses too. So the 5 senses, so your hearing, your sight, your touch, smell, all of that is all working. And then a pleasant mind and soul.
Ah, interesting.
Full definition of what health is. That's how it ends. This is what health is. To basically have all of your physiology, all of your anatomy, and all the systems that are associated working, the ability to remove waste, but then also your senses are functioning and you have a pleasant and happy soul and mind.
So funny. And I just had an interview earlier today with Dr. Estima. We were just sharing that a lot of fitness experts, like female fitness experts, share these incredible diets, and they say, I didn't have my period in 5 years, and I didn't. Right. I go to the bathroom once a week, and this, I guess, misunderstanding how often you should go to the bathroom and how these toxins are brewing in your body.
Yes.
And my little download, there was a moment in my life 2 years ago where I couldn't get myself to go to the bathroom on a regular basis. And again, sit with ayahuasca, and she's like, you need to let that shit go. Right. And I'm like, well, I get it. You mean like the relationship? And she's like, no, like whatever you're holding on. Yes. It's like literally like you're holding on to shit, right? Yeah. And it's like that feeling of unsafety will translate into me not being able to even go to the bathroom on so many levels, and just feeling like I can let go and surrender and let things, let life flow through me, literally. Yes. And as I worked on my sense of safety, so I want to go back to that. Yeah. All of a sudden, I don't have any issues anymore. Amazing. But that was like a big one for me. Because again, if you understand the mechanics of it from a physiological level, like, when you're in fight or flight, digestion, which includes evacuation, isn't important. You're too busy, quote unquote, putting blood to the muscles to run, keeping your eyes very vigilant on whatever your surroundings might bring as a potential threat. So anything that is sort of in the realm of health, maintenance, rejuvenation, repair, no, we don't have time for that, right? It's like you're having a fight with your wife. It's like you're not thinking about cleaning the desk in your office, right? Yeah. It's not a priority. So yes, that definition of health changed my entire life, because now it's like you've got a blueprint for the things to look at. Because to be asymptomatic, which a lot of people are, doesn't mean you're healthy, right? That, to use the Western definition of health as the absence of disease, is like saying wealth is the absence of debt. You could literally have 10 cents in your bank. You don't have any debt. That doesn't mean you're wealthy. That is such a good comparison. That's exactly how we navigate, right? Like, oh, I don't have cancer. I mean, I still don't go to the bathroom, and I don't have my period, but I'm healthy. Like, I have 2 hands and 2 legs, and I can still walk. I'm not taking any medication, maybe a few. I take Advil every now and again, or Tylenol, or whatever. The stuff that people pop that is just horrific, right? So yes, when you understand there's a continuum, right, from the extremes of like, chronic, fatal, potentially soon diseases of the cancers and the things that people deal with, the cardiac disease. These are the 2, primary enders of life. The third, ironically, most people don't know, is the allopathic system itself. Like, iatrogenesis is usually the third leading cause of death. Like when people really hear that, meaning like practitioner error from a doctor, doing not overdosing, that's a whole different realm of where pharmaceutical is killing millions of people who are recreationally playing with it. But when people are following their actual prescription, they die. Surgical errors, of course, So when you really get like, wow, the cascade, cancer, cardiac disease, and then my own healthcare providers. Top. Which is like the best thing you can do is to avoid the sick system as much as possible. And I love that you mentioned that even in Ayurveda, they said that the mindset is part of the healthy journey. You aren't fully healthy if your mindset is sick.
No. And to my point earlier, hopefully as a visual to help people, using the metaphor of a house that is covered in mold and you're living in it, eating great food, doing your push-ups, it doesn't matter. You're in a container that itself is contaminated. So likewise, when you understand the body sits inside the mind, if the mind is in a form of constraint, dis-ease, right? That word that I use a lot, dis-ease, dis means the absence of, right? So
the absence of ease.
The absence of ease is the precursor to disease. It will eventually cascade through whatever system is you're most vulnerable. And we all have what's called a kaiwa gunya, is a term for Ayurveda, which means the guy that played soccer or high school football hurt his knee, but now he's 40 and that's where his arthritis is showing up because it's a weak spot where he lost the integrity. But the arthritis is only showing up because of what's going on in terms of his mind and body and his diet, right? So,
which is so important. Again, this is a very different mindset to the Western medicine, that if you have skin issues, the first thing is like, let me just put a cream on. You know, what cream you're using? Like, oh, how did you heal your hair? Was it a shampoo or whatever it might be? And so this is this idea that we spot treat our body instead of
out to in. Mm-hmm. But even sitting here and anyone sitting at home, it's a weird thought. And for some people, it can be a little bit like of a grotesque thought. We're both shedding skin cells. Right. We're not
as we're talking to you right
yes now. And everybody, like literally millions of cells, and then that's just superficially. Internally, cells are dying. The autophagy that is necessary as part of our staying alive, right? We have to shed. So when you realize that it's an in to out proposition being human, then you start to focus on mindset like that is deep in terms of how I feel, the dis-ease or the joy or the ease, the way that I digest my food. Like, again, without getting graphic, anatomically, from our mouth to our anus, we're a tube. We're a cylinder.
Yeah.
So think about it. Whatever you've eaten, folks, right now is outside of your body. It's like, wait, what? Until it gets absorbed, then it doesn't become part of us. We're walking like these cylinders, like Pringle tubes without the bottom. Right?
Yeah. No.
And to whatever degree that we're able to digest properly, because we're not in a state of fight or flight, we chew our food, we metabolize it properly. It's good food that's not filled with microplastics and toxins. I know all of this list starts to become overwhelming in a world that is so contaminated, but at least get the information to do the best we can. And again, I'm always going to lean towards what I focus on, which is mindset, to live in a place of joy, self-acceptance, and profound harmony with the way things are right now, which isn't great. You know, it's not great. And even for Peter Crone, who's about as comfortable as they get in his own skin and at peace, you know, there's things that I'm like, this is absolute bullshit. Like the way that people are being lied to, contaminated, poisoned, all the things that are happening in the last few years particularly. It's tough not to want to be a stand and get up there. And I obviously am outspoken, at least on my channel, to try and educate people. But that doesn't behoove me if I'm in a state of fight, you know, albeit well-intended and, you know, with the aspirations to help millions of people. There's a balance where I have to go, okay, there's only so much I can do, you know.
Which is so tough because where's the limit of like, because I believe that the true suffering comes from us not accepting the world around us as it is, right? Because it's like
resistance.
Yes, that's why like what you teach, what Byron Katie teaches about the resistance and in denial of reality. And if you're a lover of like reality, you love everything what is. Yeah. But it's also to what extent are you able to put that up when you're being, like you said, lied to and poisoned to, and it's really. It's that balance of like, I also don't want to, you know, allow for things to happen.
Yeah. And I didn't ask me anything the other day. And someone asked a good question. They said, what's the difference between acceptance and giving up?
Oh.
Right. And so it speaks to that, because I think sometimes love is misconstrued as this very passive energy. And I think it can be on one part. And I tend to delineate the masculine and the feminine in every arena of life. But at love, for the most part, as a generalization, when it's coming from the maternal, the feminine tends to be very embracing, all accepting, very nurturing. Like, oh, honey, it's okay. The kid falls over, has got a boo-boo, or they failed an exam. It's the mother, the maternal tends to be the all embrace, right? But the masculine form of love, when you really understand it, is more the disciplinarian. It looks like it might be more or less accepting, but it's a different form. It's I'm a stand for something. I'm committed to your excellence. I'm committed to your achievement. And so I think that's where I try to find that balance between my humanity, accepting, certainly when I'm doing a mastermind, listening to someone tell a very difficult story, like you cited the guy from Colombia who wasn't being accepted by his dad when he came out as being gay. Like, there's space to start with. I think always the unconditional. It's okay. I get it. That must be awful. I totally, as best as I can, sympathize with your situation. Then the masculine can kind of come in and do a little bit of the sort of redirection, the reframe, and the new eyes, right? And so the giving up and surrender or acceptance, to me, acceptance is I'm okay with the way things are, and that's peace. Then the and part is, and I'm committed to where I want to go.
Oh, beautiful.
Right. So it's not a reconciliation.
Perfect
it's not a resignation.
Weight loss for everything.
Yes.
So can you repeat that again for if you're listening to this right now, when it comes to your health journey, your biohacking journey, your fitness journey, how your body looks, where you want to be with your mindset.
Yes.
What's our new mantra for
today? And even finances and relationships, any arena of life, is that to find, first of all, profound acceptance for where I am, whilst remaining committed to where I want to be.
Beautiful.
And so those can seem at times like paradoxical, but they can be synonymous, right? What most people do is they don't do step one first enough. It is the absence of acceptance of where they are that drives the commitment. People go to the gym certainly at the beginning of the year because of what they don't want. When you're being driven by the negation of like, I don't want to be out of shape, I don't want to be fat, I don't want to blah, blah, blah. Well, now you're being driven by a judgment of self. So you're not actually in the energy of self-love and acceptance, which is the precursor to getting the things that you want. You're already in a state of denial and criticism.
It's one of the hardest things, to be honest, even in my journey, to truly accept, because there's this illusion that if I accept, that means that it won't change. Yeah. If I accept my fat, if I accept me being overweight, that things won't change.
Yeah.
But to your argument, well, you've been trying to deny your fat for 20 years. Try something different.
Yes, it doesn't work. Like, how well is it working is that expression. So it might, hopefully it seems, totally attainable for people, but it also might seem quite paradoxical or even new information for a lot of people. Like, oh, wow, if you really go to the subtle levels of your own narratives and dialogues about yourself, or even your partner, or your children, or your bank account, and you'll realize how much criticism, judgment, and resistance, or how often you're making someone that you say you love wrong, right?
Sorry. That's my next guest. So can you just let her and just ask to wait? Is this okay? All right. Sorry.
Yeah. So when you realize how often we are saying that we love someone, but actually in real life, in real time, we're making them wrong for many things, judgment, criticism, then you start to realize, actually, I'm not in an energy of acceptance for myself or the circumstances of my life. And that's why they tend to be perpetuating in the state that I'm saying I don't like. It's not until you can really, and it's hard to explain. I hope people can feel it. But if right now, from your partner to your kids, to your weight, to your bank account, to your skin, to your hair, to whatever it is that you may think you have a problem with, if you can just right now, just at this moment, allow it to be the way it is, the feeling of ease that cascades through people's physiology is oftentimes something most people have never experienced. But it's in that space, in that letting go, that new vitality, new prana, new chi, new inspiration can show up. It is in the relinquishment, because sometimes, one of the questions I get a lot is like, how do you let go of fill in the blank, past relationship, past and losing my job, whatever. And for me, it's less about letting go and more about letting be.
Oh, mic dropping again, Peter. Let it be, like the Beatles, right? Let it be.
Let things be the way they are. And in that meaning, like I often say, I have an intimate relationship with reality and where I'm at. And that allows me to respond versus react, to be response-able, as many people would have heard that word broken down, to be responsible for my life versus be a victim of circumstance. Because what I want people to understand is in the subtle and sometimes not so subtle judgment of a loved one life, you are in resistance to life and you're actually saying, I'm a victim of circumstance. If they would change, if they would be different, if things were different, I would be okay. What that's actually perpetuating is that you are powerless.
And what if you could entertain this idea that if you spend the next couple of days accepting everything and everyone in your life exactly the way it is, your age, your weight, your partner, your kids, how much they scream, how little time you have, how little sleep you're getting, whatever the story you tell yourself, that your happiness is on the other side of that, amazing things happen. Super hard. I don't think I've ever gotten to a point where I could go a few days where I fully let things be, because there is this movie in my head that I'm like, oh, but I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And whatever is the story that
and if it's not you should, it's someone else should,
Yeah.
But
and it's like, it's a prison. And I'm like, I realized the older I get that I was like, oh my God, like, what's the point that I have put myself in a prison, like screw the government. Like, I'm doing it to myself. Why am I even like being upset with someone in the office?
Because then you are energetically subtly contributing to the suffering in the world because you're in a state of disease.
100%, right?
Yeah, which is so and again, I check myself on this, right? Because we're under the impression that the peace we so desperately crave is on the other side of our circumstances being perfect.
Yes.
When in fact, peace is to be found regardless of circumstances when we are at peace with the way things are.
Yeah, which I think is such a beautiful summary of our interview, because I think the new wave in health, and it's going to be nervous system. People are so absolutely exhausted. And, and number one question is people asking, what supplements for the nervous system? I'm like, what if you didn't have to stress in the first place? To a degree, not like there will be always some stressors in your life, but it's how you approach them. Yeah. And you realize this is all a computer game, and you're just going through another level right now. Even Peter Crone has his own levels. I don't know if he feels comfortable sharing, but he's on his like level of his computer game that he's going through, and it never stops.
Yeah, it's never ending. As I said, the mountain well at the top. One of the other things I love sharing from the Ayurveda scriptures, thousands of years old, are these sort of three primary pillars, right? Which is in regards to anything that you want to heal or improve, you have to first remove whatever's contributing to the issue. Right.
So what that would look like,
So root cause, like go to whatever is the contributing factor. So if you live in a house where there's mold and you're struggling with whatever it is, all the symptoms that come with that, like the foggy brains, the lack of energy, the not sleeping, you can do all the work and take glutathione and NAC and all the things you want to do. But if you're still living in the house, it's like you're shoveling water out of a boat that's got a hole in it. Right? It's like, right. So first of all, remove the root cause. Secondly, then you balance the effects of the previous root cause, right? So meaning this, particularly the physiology, is going to be this compilation and accumulation over time. If someone's been smoking, drinking, they're an alcoholic, they've been doing drugs. First of all, we've got to get the booze out of the house, the cocaine out of the lifestyle. But then the body has still got this like canvas upon which you've painted all of the last few years with whatever things you've been doing. That's when we can start to the cleansing, the detoxing. Then the third stage is really what I help people step into, is this new paradigm for existence. Right. So that now that's the new eyes. So now who I am, because I'm no longer living in the world of I'm worthless, I'm not good enough, which was the precursor to my feeling of suffering, which then I found escape in cocaine or booze. Once I undid the mind, the container that I was stuck in, that, I'm not good enough. It removes. It's a dissolution process. How do I feel? Oh my God, I feel so much freer. I feel at peace. Well, then you don't need the cocaine or the booze. But now we can clean up what happened, and now you're a new human being who literally identifies as a different person. Wow. Might have the same name, same nationality, whatever. But energetically, your identity is literally brand new.
Amazing. And this is, my dears, what Peter Crone does on daily basis with their students, to his friends. So Peter, thank you so much for coming again. And you were at the very beginning of my journey, where I was just starting my podcast, and 4 years ago had a 3-year hiatus. But anyways, how can people work with you, and where can they find you?
Instagram, just Peter Crone, at Peter Crone, and then my website, petercrone.com. And right now, depending on when people hear this, there's the opportunity to be in my mastermind that's coming up. Maybe we'll do a little story. Yeah. Otherwise, my new platform, Freedom, which is sort of a membership, it's my version of a conscious Netflix. So rather than watching, drama and blood and violence, you're learning about the combination of spiritual awakening with human optimization.
Wow. which is, I guess, where everything is heading.
Yes.
Just the connection. Like there were two very separate things. You're either in spirituality,
yes,
and a lot of friends that are in that space are not very body oriented. They live in their mind and they think I'm spiritual, so I'm eating shit and it doesn't really matter. And then there are the biohackers that are too obsessed about the body. And I feel like now we're merging together into this beautiful community of people that just want to do both. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, my dear. I love you too.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful to be part of your journey and have contributed and supported you however I can. And I'll continue to do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.